So we just got another bombshell revelation from the massive Pokemon leak that's been going on over the past few days, and it is cut Gen 6 Pokemon, and this stuff is genuinely nuts. I know that this is the second bonus video that I've created outside of my normal upload schedule concerning these leaks, but I just cannot wait to talk about this stuff, and in particular this Gen 6 stuff, which is why I'm putting this video up basically just as soon as I can get it up, and why it's going to be a bonus video, because this stuff is honestly insane. You're already seeing something on the screen right now. If you can't tell, it is Beta, Floette, Flabébé, and Florges, and oh my gosh, this stuff is genuinely, like, I would say, probably without a doubt, the best cut Pokemon designs that we have ever seen in terms of the designs themselves and their overall quality. Like, this stuff is bonkers. By the way, shout out to my man Soul Silver Art for compiling all of this stuff for me to be able to just quickly go through it with you guys. Be sure to check him out on Twitter, that's where he's at. And without further ado, let's just get into these designs. Like I said, Flabébé, Floette, Florges, these are their beta designs, and for someone who thinks that this line is like a B plus A tier level Pokemon in terms of their designs, so pretty dang good, this just blows those out of the water. Like, these are incredible. These are like S plus tier level designs, and that is the crazy thing about this particular batch of leaks and cut Pokemon, is that they're basically all like this. Like, these are the most insane designs that I think I have ever seen, like, cut Pokemon wise, or possibly even in general. Like, this is just next level stuff. Like, they really were gonna bring it for X and Y. I've always said that I think Kalos has the best set of Pokemon, but this is just like even better than even that. Like, this is ridiculous. So like, and I'm just flabbergasted. I just am dumbfounded why these designs would have not been used when they are just so unbelievably stellar, even if the official ones are still good. Let's go ahead and move on though to the next picture in our list. We've got Noivern, who looks mostly the same here. It kind of looks to me like it looks a little more beastly, and I also kind of get like a knight sort of vibe from its head. I think those are probably just its nostrils, but its head almost looks like a knight's helmet, which is kind of interesting, but mostly the same. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which is, like, what are you even saying? Like, why would this be cut? How are you going to make something this incredible and just scrap it without even a word from it at all? Like, how are you not even going to let this live? This is nuts. It almost feels like it could have been a fossil Pokemon, because it does feel a little fossil-y, in my opinion. I also heard someone point out that maybe this could have gone, or maybe this Pokemon has something to do with Wimpod and Golisopod, because the first stage in particular does resemble Wimpod quite a lot in both its appearance, its body shape, and like the art and the angle of it. Like, there are some similarities there, so that potentially could be a thing. But even if that was a thing, we still I hate to say it because it's so overused, especially now with these leaks, but we got robbed, even if that's the case, because this is another just S plus tier design. Are you kidding me? Like, this is just insane stuff. Usually when you get beta stuff, it's like fun and really interesting and fascinating, but most of the time you're getting designs that really do feel beta-like. They feel unfinished, they feel like they're not up to snuff, like you can tell why they were cut more or less for the most part, whereas these designs are just like miles above like most of the stuff we actually got. Like, how in the heck did Aromatisse get in this game when stuff like this and the Florges line were scrapped? That's what I want to know. I want to know the logic that is going on here. And by the way, I need to mention before I get too far in this video that all this stuff is obviously developing and it's ongoing as far as like the coverage of it. So disclaimer in case anything changes with these designs or I don't mention a detail that comes up later on or anything like that, because I'm just calling it as I'm seeing it right now, and I just wanted to get into it because this stuff is just too good not to just cover, like just talk about. I had to talk about it. So moving on, can you tell I'm just like unbelievably just like blown away, and it's because we keep getting stuff like this from this leak. Like look at these guys. They're like skull bird. I can't even tell what birds they're supposed to be, but they're insane. I could see these guys remind me a lot of Volibear and Mandibuzz as far as like skull themed birds, so I could maybe see why they could be cut. And going back to this other guy who, like I mentioned, could potentially be a fossil, and all the Japanese could be completely disproving me on any of these things. Like I said, I'm just kind of calling it at face value here. But given that I got the fossil vibe from these guys, maybe these guys, since they've got like a bone motif, could have potentially been the other, like another set of fossils that were to go along with those guys. Because also, these guys kind of give me a vibe of like dodo birds, which obviously are extinct, or some kind of similar extinct bird like that. So that is something I could potentially see as well. But speculation aside and just looking at the designs, these are absolutely bonkers. Like, what are we doing? Like, how are we getting stuff that just gets completely scrapped that's this good? And again, Aromatisse makes the final game. Like, where is the logic? We're going to go ahead and move on, though, and now we have this really interesting two-stage line of what appears to be like a chameleon Pokemon of some kind, and it just has a super unique look. It's not as just like, I wouldn't say it's like my favorite of the bunch, but it's like just super unique and interesting looking. Like, this stuff is just genuinely, I feel like all of these designs have sort of a vibe of their own that kind of separates them even from your typical official designs, and maybe that's why they were cut, because they were just sort of like giving themselves less limitations in terms of how they could design things, and they just ended up with a whole new just like feel of a design that just consequently ended up being next level. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that's any excuse for cutting these Pokemon, because these absolutely could have been Pokemon. I don't feel like they don't feel like Pokemon at all. I just feel like maybe they were stretching their creative muscles a little bit more in terms of like not limiting themselves to what Pokemon have to be. I could see that sort of thing resulting in these kinds of designs, but at the same time, all of these could have been official Pokemon, and not only would they have fit, but they would have just like sent Pokemon into the stratosphere, like up like to the next level and then some in terms of the quality of the designs, because these are just insane. We're gonna move on now though, and oh my lord, like we have just gotten to one that is like the epitome. It's another beautiful example of what I'm talking about here. This is like S++ level. So right here, we've got a little peanut guy. He's looking pretty cute all on his own, pretty freaking incredible just like by himself. And by the way, it's thundering outside, so I apologize if you can hear that, but I just gotta keep moving. So yeah, this guy anyway, he's pretty cool. But then when you look at his evolution, look at this. It's a peanut dinosaur. Are you kidding me? This is S+++. The only thing you can really take away from this as like a negative is that it does feel a little like Breloom, so it kinda is like crossing that line in terms of being a little too similar to another Pokemon, but just design-wise in general at face value, this is ridiculous. S+++. Like these two right here, they would have been probably in my top 5 easily Pokemon of all time, if not like top 3. Like, these guys are insane. Like, just the creativity, the charm, the cuteness, the coolness. Like, this is Pokemon, just like Pokemon design, just perfected. Like, this is so good, and it's just it's saddening, it's heartbreaking, and it's mind-boggling how something like this would have been trashed. Like, how could you have looked at something like this as a developer and say, this isn't good enough? Like, the only thing I can think of is that they felt it didn't fit for some reason, because as far as quality, there's no way in heck that you're looking at something like this and going, this isn't good enough. And it continues to be so, because now we have a cut Flamingo Pokemon. And this is just a perfect example, because we just got a Flamingo Pokemon in Gen 9 with Flamingo. And it is, aside from its really clever name, is one of the most basic looking Pokemon you're ever going to find. And as far as finally getting a Flamingo Pokemon, in my opinion, it was a pretty big disappointment, because it's basically just a flamingo. And they had something like this just sitting in their vault, which is just immeasurably better. There's so much more creativity, actual design that's going in here. Like, look at its feet. Its feet are high-heeled shoes. Are you kidding me? That is quintessential Pokemon design. That is the stuff we love. And once again, sorry for the thunder if you can hear it. Apparently, nature is going crazy for the leaks too. But yeah, this is what we wanted out of a Flamingo Pokemon. We did not want Flamingo. I know some people like it, but this is the kind of thing I feel like most people were looking for with a Flamingo Pokemon. Actual design, creativity, charm. This was what I personally wanted out of a Flamingo Pokemon. And it's another S+ tier design that is just unbelievable that it was cut. Okay, there's also one more of the like totally brand new Pokemon that I'm going to cover here, and that is this interesting looking thing. It obviously seems to be some sort of fish, but otherwise I personally can't really make out what it is going for. I did notice someone say, and it might have been Soul Silver Art, so shout out to him again, if so, but it does possibly look like it could be the type of Pokemon that was like supposed to be a surfing Pokemon in particular, and like you were supposed to, as the player, like sit on its head, and that's kind of what's going on with that thing on its head. Is it's like meant to be sat on by the player, and this is like supposed to be the surfing Pokemon of the game. That is like something I could see, but otherwise I'm not really too sure what's going on here. However, I love how unique it is, so another fantastic design. Okay, next up we're going to be looking at some beta and cut designs for Mega Evolutions, starting obviously with Charizard, and these are really, really interesting in and of themselves. This is obviously like it looks to be a beta version of Mega Charizard Y, and it's like a version that's a little more brutish, I would say, than the sleeker look that we got in the final game, and this is an example of something I feel like that they actually did get right in the final game as opposed to the beta, but this does not look bad at all either. I think this actually looks pretty interesting and cool as well. There are also a couple other different looks at this. Like, for example, we've got these alternate takes on like the same concept, which look really cool. We've got this one, which looks great. Ultimately, I feel like I am happy with what we got for Mega Charizard Y, but these are some really, really interesting looks at like another possibility, and they're just cool to see in general. Here's another interesting look at what could have been, and again, just really, really fascinating stuff. There are also some early looks here at early Mega Mewtwo X and Y, I believe, and this is actually where things get really, really interesting. This black one looks especially cool. But evidently, and this seems to be totally, as far as I can tell, unconfirmed, not conclusive at this point at all, but there are some rumblings based on what I've seen that at least internally, at least as far as what these designs were being referred to in terms of when they were being developed. There are some rumblings going around that these designs were being labeled, I guess you could say, or at the very least referred to as Mew 3 and possibly even Mew 4. And it seems to be the case that this might have just been in reference to the 2 Mega Evolutions of Mewtwo. That obviously makes perfect sense. But there are also I've been seeing some stuff going around that these might have actually been specifically, like, intended to be a Mew 3 instead of just being referred to as a Mew 3 because it's a Mega Evolution, if you know what I mean. So it was supposed to, theoretically anyway, be more of its own Pokemon, and I've heard and seen that maybe potentially this is sort of what rolled into the idea of Mega Evolution, and so it kind of just became a part of Mega Evolution and was sort of like an inspiration point for it, as opposed to simply what they were referring to Mega Mewtwo X and Y as. Meaning that possibly, potentially, Mew 3 could have actually potentially been an idea that they were considering at one point. All of that stuff, as far as I can tell, is completely unconfirmed, is speculative, and is theoretical based on the information we're getting. There's no, like, concrete, conclusive, like, yes, this is a thing that was happening as far as I can tell. It seems like it's just analysis of the leaks themselves at this point, so take that with a huge grain of salt, but even just the idea that something like that could be real or possible is absolutely insane. And look at this idea. Like, this particular design right here actually does look like it could be a Mew 3 if a Mew 3 were to ever happen, because it kind of in a way combines Mega Mewtwo X and Y and looks more kind of like a true progression of Mewtwo to where it could be a Mew 3. So that is absolutely insane. And we've also got this black and purple one too. Like, that's just bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers good. S+ once again. We've also got more megas like Blastoise, and this one, it's similar to the Charizard, where it's like a more brutish version of what we got in the final game. And this, honestly, I feel like, while the other one, I like the sleeker look that we got in the final games better, I feel like for Blastoise, the more brutish and kind of tank kind of look works better for Blastoise here. So this is something that I actually feel like I would have preferred to see over the final design, which feels a little more streamlined in terms of this concept. This right here is another one that's incredible. I love the kind of wave mustache that it's got going on. Like, this is just some sick stuff, and I feel like this is another thing that I also would have preferred, because in comparison to this, in my opinion, the final feels sort of like a simplified version of this, where this just kind of feels like it fits so much more, it just fits a lot better with what Blastoise is as a Pokemon in terms of being kind of like a more brutish, tanky Pokemon, at least in terms of its design. So I feel like this would have been amazing to have. And we are going to continue the Blastoise stuff with these alternate designs, which kind of provide an alternate layout for its cannons, which is also really cool. I really like that a lot. And I love the addition of the tail too. That's just absolutely phenomenal. I love that. This is another alternate take. I think I probably like this version of it without the mustache and the tail, but still, just really cool. How can you not love this stuff? And then we get into the Mega Venusaur stuff. This one's looking a bit interesting, but there are some designs here for Mega Venusaur that go insanely crazy. This is obviously, it's a take. I'll say that. It's a take, and it does feel a little more beta-like, I will say, but coming up are the ones I wanted to actually specifically touch on that just look nuts. It looks like they were going for more of the pure toad approach for Venusaur, as opposed to just making its bulb bigger. And once again, we're probably just kind of stretching their creative muscles on what a Mega Venusaur could be. But nevertheless, once we get to these designs that I want to really touch on, that's where it gets really crazy for Mega Venusaur. And without further ado, I'm just going to hop over to him. I'm just giving you guys a chance to see all of these different iterations. But what I'm talking about here is this. This looks insane to me. I will admit that it probably feels a little too different to actually be something that legitimately could have been a Mega Venusaur without making some tweaks. But in terms of just a look and a design and a concept, I think this is insanely cool. And this would totally flip my perspective on the Venusaur family to where I would actually want to use them. And by the way, I don't hate them, but they're not necessarily Pokemon I want to use or pick as starter Pokemon. But this is something that I would pick the Bulbasaur family for. I think this looks freaking credible. This is another take on that, or maybe it's another look at the same design when it's all got its throat puffed up and everything. But this just looks, oh my gosh, I would have loved something like this. I would have absolutely loved something like this. And then with the vines and everything, you're killing me. I also just really love the color scheme with the darker greens and reds and everything. Like, this is just, again, S++. In terms of the actual designs themselves, I think that these are the greatest cut Pokemon that we have ever seen in terms of their design quality. That's totally subjective, obviously. That's just my personal opinion. But I think these take the cake. And it does not surprise me whatsoever that they came from Kalos, because, as I said, I personally think Kalos has the best quality of Pokemon overall. And it's just insane to me that they would cut these many good Pokemon. Like, and again, allow Pokemon like Aromatisse to get in the game. Like, that's also another thing that's really fascinating in and of itself that I want to know. Like, what was the logic behind cutting those Pokemon and then allowing something like Aromatisse into the game? That is something that is just as interesting to me almost as these actual designs themselves. But with that being said, that is all of the Pokemon I'm going to be covering here today. I think that's all of the Gen 6 cut Pokemon stuff that we've got so far. And I just couldn't wait to talk about them, so I had to get my 2 cents out there just as quick as possible. But as always, I will continue to be covering this stuff and just making videos about what I find interesting about all the leaks, so be sure to like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts about these cut Pokemon in the comments as well, because I would love to hear it. And also, just remember, the leaks are a developing situation. Facts could get readjusted. Details could be reconfirmed or deconfirmed or whatever. I'm not trying to say any of this is completely definitive. I'm just sort of reporting on it and giving my 2 cents because this is obviously super cool. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll be back soon with another really cool video, so stay tuned and subscribe for that. And until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.